Welcome back to A320 Knowledge, your trusted source for Airbus expertise. Today, we're diving into the buttons and switches on the left-hand side of the overhead panel. The A320 has hundreds of different buttons and switches, and we'll be tackling each of them section by section. The left-hand side of the overhead panel contains many critical controls for various systems. Today, we'll be going over the GPWS, Emergency Electrical Power and Evacuation panels. The first section is the Ground Proximity Warning System panel. There are two systems controlled by this panel, the basic GPWS and the enhanced GPWS, known as eGPWS. In another video, we will go over the GPWS system in detail. This tutorial will simply cover the functions of the GPWS push buttons. The terrain push button on the left-hand side controls the eGPWS. An amber fault light illuminates along with an ECAM caution if the terrain awareness display or terrain clearance floor functions fail. By pressing this push button off, all eGPWS functions are disabled, and an ECAM caution NAV GPWS terrain detection fault is displayed. The four push buttons to the right of this are connected to the basic GPWS. The system push button controls the entire basic GPWS system. By pressing this push button off, modes 1 to 5 are inhibited, which disables all warnings. This might be useful for a gear-up landing. An amber fault light will illuminate, along with an ECAM caution, in the event of a GPWS mode 1 to 5 malfunction. When the glide slope mode push button is set to off, the mode 5 glide slope warning is inhibited. This could potentially be used for a localizer-only or localizer backcourse approach. When the flap mode push button is set to off, the mode 4 too low flaps warning is inhibited. This could potentially be used if the flaps are unable to extend or when doing a flap 0, 1, or 2 landing. The landing flap 3 push button is set to on when a flap 3 landing is being conducted. In this case, the mode 4 too low flaps warning is inhibited. GPWS flap 3 is also displayed on the ECAM memo. Next is the Emergency Electrical Power panel. The black guarded Emergency Generator Test push button connects the relevant buses to the emergency generator when pressed and held. This test is normally performed by maintenance and tests the emergency generator, utilizing the blue hydraulic system, but without deploying the RAT. If the normal AC buses are supplied, then the emergency generator is driven hydraulically if the blue electric pump is running. The AC essential bus and the DC essential bus are then connected to the emergency generator. Note the DC essential shed and AC essential shed buses are not powered in this case. ECAM then displays the electric page automatically, although this is only true on the ground. Now, if the batteries are the only power supplying the aircraft, then the static inverter powers the AC essential bus only. The generator one-line push button is part of the smoke drill procedure. In order to isolate the cause of electrical smoke, the flight crew manually extends the RAT and enters the emergency electrical configuration by turning the main generators off. This deactivates all non-essential electrical equipment. By turning this push button off, the generator 1 line contactor opens and generator 1 becomes isolated from the electrical system, except for powering one wing tank fuel pump per wing directly. The AC bus 1 channel is now supplied from generator 2 through bus tie contactors. If an amber smoke light illuminates, then smoke has been detected in the avionics ventilation duct. The RAT and emergency generator fault light illuminates red if the emergency generator is not supplying power when AC bus 1 and AC bus 2 are not powered. In older aircraft, a logic also requires the nose wheel landing gear to be up and retracted. The alert is normally triggered when a malfunction has caused the RAT to not automatically deploy. In this case, manually extending the RAT may be required. When pressing the red guarded man-on push button, this selects a manual RAT extension. This normally takes 5 seconds to extend. The emergency generator coupling occurs approximately 3 seconds after the RAT is extended and supplying the emergency generator. As soon as the emergency generator electrical parameters are within tolerance, the emergency generator is connected to the aircraft network. The RAT automatically deploys when the following conditions are met. 1. AC bus 1 and 2 are not electrically supplied. 2. Aircraft speed exceeds 100 knots. Remember, when pressing a red guarded push button, the action must be confirmed between both pilots, and the action is irreversible. Next is the evacuation panel. The emergency evacuation signal system alerts the flight attendants to evacuate the cabin. The command switch activates the evacuation alert from the flight deck. The evac light flashes red, and the evacuation horn sounds in the flight deck and cabin. Pushing the command switch a second time cancels the evacuation alert in the flight deck and the cabin. Some airlines do not utilize the command push button and simply rely on an oral announcement from the evacuation initiator, so check your operator's SOPs. The horn shut-off push button silences the evacuation horn in the flight deck after the command button has been pressed. Captain and purser switch allows the flight crew to select whether the flight attendants are able to initiate an evacuation. This is normally dictated by company standard operating procedures. When the switch is in the captain and purser position, the evacuation alert may be activated from the cabin or flight deck. When the evacuation switch is selected to captain, the evacuation alert may be activated only by the flight deck. In case of a cabin-initiated evacuation, a guarded command push button is located at each flight attendant panel. Thanks for tuning into part 2 of this bite-sized tutorial on the overhead panel.